wake the streets up. Yeah, yeah, okay, wake the streets up. Okay, come on. Okay, wake the streets up. Yeah, yeah, okay. Hello, everyone. This is Terry Watson. Hopefully, you all can hear me. How's it going today? Today, I have a great discussion plan. We have some folks who are joining us to have the discussion on law enforcement responding to generational trauma in the Black community. So welcome to our first one. My name is Terry Watson. I'm the founder of Strategies for Justice and a facilitator for this program. The way this is going to work is I'm going to ask a couple of questions to our panelists and they're going to respond, but I'm hoping that folks online do most of the questions, ask most of the questions. As I see them, I will try to pop them up. Please take this time to share this link, share this video. Hopefully, the more people we have, the better conversation we can have. So with that said, first, I want to introduce our panelists. First, we have Damon K Jones. Damon K Jones is the New York rep for Black and Law Enforcement of America, also known as BLEA, which believes in that law enforcement purpose is to protect and serve, not to contain the poor, the economically disadvantaged, or take advantage of those who cannot fight back or have a true voice in the matter at hand. Also joining us is Sonia Pruitt. Sonia Pruitt is the national chairwoman for the National Black Police Association. NBPA are dedicated to promoting justice, fairness, and effectiveness in law enforcement. NBPA has served chartered organizations throughout the United States and has associate members abroad in Canada, Bermuda, and the United Kingdom. The core focus of the NBPA centers upon law enforcement issues with a strong emphasis on the effects of these issues on the community. Last, and I know that she is currently having some technical issues, but she will be joining us, is Heather Taylor. She's the president of the Ethical Society of Police, which was founded in 1968 by African American officers to address racial bias within the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. The goal is to bridge the gap between police and the community. ESOP is open to officers and civilians regardless of race, sex, gender, sexual orientation, and religion. ESOP represents approximately 220 police officers and civilians employed by the city of St. Louis. So with that said, I'd like to bring in our guests. So Damon and Sonia, welcome to our forum. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, sir. Good morning. Oh, good afternoon. I'm sorry.
I know that our dear sister Heather is going to log in with us soon, and when she pops up, I will bring her in as well. I think she's probably the only Mac user amongst us.
I know I'm using the Mac, man. Maybe that's why my thing cut off. I don't know what's going on.
I don't have a Mac, so I was getting cut off. They don't want us to talk.
Exactly.
Well,
don't put four people together.
Well, people online, please tell us where you're from. I see we have currently 33 logged in, so please tell us where you're from in the chat box. And I thought the way we can get this started was actually from a quote from my uncle, and I'll read it out, and I'll ask each panelist to respond to that. So, and this is the way I actually opened the Battle with Moses people. It's right from the book, One Righteous Man, and it goes like this. Often harsh, if not brutal, the department had long since expanded goodwill, and now many saw police as working against, not for blacks. Battle suffered guilt by association. He was a cop. A cop had stood by while white page. He was a cop. And cops had fully swept up blacks in disturbances. He was a cop. and cops had refused to arrest even the white man who threw the fatal rock in Chicago. More than ever, Battle felt the sting of the perception that would haunt many black cops for decades. Um, that as being seen on the other side. This was a problem inherited by the Negro policeman in New York City at that time, Battle remembered. His duty was to uphold the law, but Negro citizens looked at the law across the bitter color bar. So, with that said, let's start with you, Sonia. What are your thoughts about how does that reality play out today?
Mm-hmm. It's never changed after all those years. We are still fighting the same battle, not just on the outside, which is why this conversation is important, but officers on the inside of these institutions, in corrections, in police departments and other law enforcement, in the court system. We're still fighting the same battles. And I need people to just think, to make this correlation between the fact that if they are complaining outside of policing about how they're being treated, the community, I mean, especially the Black community, then imagine what it's like for us on the inside, because not all of us are drinking what I call the blue aid. Some of us are very strongly grounded when we become the police, and we know why we're there. We know what our purpose is. We don't deviate from that. We have principles. And for us, we taking slave stripes, as I call it,
Wow.
for
Wow.
everybody, because they coming at us and we're trying to insulate the community.
That's right.
Right. How about you, Brother Jones?
I have the cosign. I mean, nothing has changed. I think many of us who are in our consciousness, well, some of us, our consciousness has sharpened being in this institution. But that's coming from people who are continuing to struggle, even though they have a blue uniform and a badge. But I also believe that the pressure is so strong on a lot of Black officers that they are in denial, or they don't want to see the continuing racism that's in law enforcement. And it doesn't matter what department you're in. You could be in the sheriffs, you could be in courts, you could be in corrections, you could be in the police department, highway patrol, whatever you want to call it. We are still in an occupation that is a stronghold of white supremacy, and you can't. There's no other way to address it.
Mm, that's really deep. And so, my first thing is, each one of you, and again, Heather will be on here soon, represents a police organization that's really geared towards standing in between that gap. Can you sort of share a little bit about those police organizations and the reasons why you guys joined them?
Mm-hmm.
I can start with you. You can have so yeah.
Okay. Um, so the NBPA was created to initially really support Black officers who were having difficulty navigating in their police departments with promotions and specialized assignments, and even for the Black community not even being hired, which nothing has changed now. We're still fighting that same fight. But the NBPA was very successful at it. There were a number of lawsuits, NBPA members from across the country. The initial members were from 13 different states, or 13 different chapters, if you will, different organizations. And so they would travel from place to place to support their membership in whatever their endeavors were. Whether it was a lawsuit, they need to have a press conference, put pressure on local government, which was a great strategy, because that way the people who were actually in that location, in that jurisdiction, they were kind of insulated by other people coming in to speak for them. So that's why we're still here. Our mission speaks to us being the vanguard for the Black community, and that includes Black officers. We are still part of our own communities, even though we wear the uniform. And I would suggest to everyone that even those people who don't quite get it, who are Black officers, who don't, understand our history and how it intersects with policing, they're still part of our community, and we still need to fight for them too, and fight that they have some clarity.
Wow. How about you, Damon? Same question.
Well, I mean, Blacks in law enforcement of America, we stand on the shoulders of the NBPA. I want to make that clear. I used to be the Northeast Region President of the National Black Police Association, and I left on my own accord. But we started we started Blacks in Law Enforcement of America, and we were very outgoing in supporting victims of police criminality, and also working with the community, working with a lot of organizations that Black law enforcement wouldn't normally work with, the gangs, the Black Panthers, and we kept it grassroots. Blacks in Law Enforcement of America, we continue to keep it grassroots, and also addressing the political process and how law enforcement is part of the political process, whether we realize it or not, but to try to educate the public on, if they want their policing to change in their community, they have to be more active in the local politics. And I think that's where we became very strong in addressing politicians and the political process and how that relates to policing policies and procedures in Black communities.
I'm glad you bring up the politics, because one thing that we do have people who RSVP who are politicians. And I'm assuming the reason why they would join us today is because they're trying to figure out how to push legislation that can be hopefully some true reform. Because we have, I call it like the cookie cutter reform, which doesn't really change anything, but push some true reform. So as for a politician, what are some of the things they could be doing right now to make that happen? And I'll ask for either one of you guys.
The first thing they need to do is have a civilian complaint review board. That's the first thing. I mean, we're talking, and I'm glad there are politicians listening, right? Because we're talking legislation and laws. So
right,
the politicians are in charge of the legislation and laws. So if there's no laws, I mean, the politicians are not passing them. So we have to have elected officials that have the testicular fortitude that are going to push back against police unions and not take police unions' money and not be in bed with police unions and be willing to negotiate the collective bargaining agreement with measures of a police accountability. Mm-hmm. I mean, look at New York. They just passed the chokehold law. Okay, I give them kudos on that, but that was 7 years ago, right?
Right.
And they say, well, it's because of George Floyd. George Floyd died to a knee to the neck. So now do we have to go back and pass a knee to the neck legislation to forbid that? No. If the politicians are listening, it's not hard. Here it is. I'm going to give it to you. If any action of a police officer violates policy, procedure, or training that ends up in a serious injury or death is a crime. It's just that simple. It's not rocket science. It's really not that hard. It's just that simple for the politician to take what I just said, put it on a sheet of paper, put it to vote, and that's it. Because when you examine these incidents of police criminality, it's not brutality. These are crimes that they are committed, but the politicians are failed to make those type of crimes law. So when you look at it, did he violate policy? Yep. Did he violate procedure? Yep. Did we train him to do what he just did? No. Put the cuffs on him, get the DA to get the paperwork done, get the grand jury, go to court, and that's it. I mean, it's not rocket science. We shouldn't have to have people that are so outraged that we're going to see businesses burn and everything else to go down for them to just pass a law. These are the things that should have been done a long time ago. And if your city doesn't have a civilian complaint review board, then you need to get on your local elected officials. It has to be a progress, a regress for the citizens, because law enforcement officer is paid by the taxpayer. Everything we get is paid by the taxpayer. This nice house I live in, paid by the taxpayer. Nice car me and my wife drive, paid by the taxpayer, right? So we violated the taxpayer, right? It has to be some type of accountability. The police department is not separate from the city government or the municipality. They are employees of that municipality. We are getting this mindset that they're like some separate entity, that can't be touched. No, they should be touched because our tax dollars pay their salary. Our tax dollars get their training. Some police departments, our tax dollars pay for their uniforms and everything else that they get. There's no way they should be able to violate us when we give them a good life to live with that paycheck.
Right.
Woo!
Well, how about you, Sonia?
My God. Okay, so here's what I was thinking when you asked that question. Besides everything that Damon just said, I'm over here nodding my head like, yeah. I would like to tell the politicians that I am disappointed. I'm disappointed because depending on where you live, if you don't have a sheriff, or you may have a sheriff and like a county police department or a city police department, but if your police department is the police chief is chosen by a mayor or a county executive, then I am disappointed that they are not holding the leadership of these police organizations responsible for this issue that we have now. Okay, so one of the suggestions that the NBPA has, one of the recommendations is that we need to have our chiefs and commissioners held responsible when they do not punish appropriately misconduct. I worked in internal affairs, okay? Okay, so I need to see those leaders held. Okay, let me back up a little bit. I also need to see leadership that looks like us. That's the first issue. But like they say, skin folk ain't always kinfolk. But the chances are, if there is enough of us, we could unify and make these decisions about punishment, or discipline. I'm sorry, not punishment, but discipline and training and policy and procedure, like Damon says. And then that person who is leading, or those people who are leading the department, need to be held accountable. How do you hold them accountable? With what Damon just talked about, that money. The federal government, I think, should withhold funding. They should withhold any grant applications. And you can also do that on a state and local level. Let the chief and then there's another thing called a job. You're gonna lose your job if you don't do your job. Is it hard? Yeah, it's hard because we got nepotism and cronyism and all this, everybody patting each other on the back and getting the hook up, especially when it comes to discipline. So who's holding the person who's responsible for that accountable? So that is my message to the politicians that are listening.
Wow. That there's my plan with this all the forums is to put together a document of the topic we're talking about today and make it a living document where folks can share it and also begin to hopefully take this back to their own communities and say, hey, this is what we can do today, but y'all both decided a new fire that's been bothering me for a while. And that's the police unions. Well, Damon, you know this because I was just down in Buffalo with our sister Carrier Horn, who was fired back in 2008 for stopping the choking of Brother Neil Mack. And one thing that stood out to me in that case and other cases of police officers that I've spoken to over time is whenever someone like you guys that look like you make this report or see injustice, the police unions do not support you, but instead support those who are committing the injustice. So my thing to you both is, how do we deal with police unions in 2020?
I'll let Sonia go first on that.
Oh my God. Ooh. So they got a lot of power. I was on a call with a young man from the Maryland FOP couple weeks ago, and he said that the purpose of the union is to negotiate benefits for its members and to make sure they have due process. And I will contend that many, many unions have gone outside the scope of their responsibilities, and they've made it their own personal pack, and they made it their own personal we're going to shame officers who don't get in line kind of thing. I mean, there are all kinds of misdeeds going on. Look at what happened after the death of Mr. Floyd and Mr. Brooks. What happened? Many police unions in this country came out and said, oh, Chauvin was wrong, but this one over here in Atlanta, that was justified. Y'all, justified doesn't mean necessary. And that is the basis of why we are talking about discrimination in policing. That is the base. It's not what you see on the camera, but even though that's very important, by the way. Okay. It's what you don't see. And what you don't see is a lot of white people being killed in the same way that black people are being killed in this country. It's not that they're not dying too. I'm just saying there's a difference in the way it's going down. Right. And ours is filled with disdain and anger and hatred. That's why we're calling it race. Let's call it what it is today. Can we call it what it is? There is racism in the policing structure. Okay. I forgot the question. I'm just right now because I got me a platform, and thank you. But what are we? It's a lot going on. But the unions, unions brought under control by those who are empowered to do that. See, just one officer can't negotiate that. But when you have laws, like in Maryland, we have the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights. Who's responsible for negotiating those terms in that document, that law? Who's those people the legislators need to get on that. And that's how you deal with the unions, because right there, they out of control. They just out here just saying whatever they want to. Don't care whose feelings are hurt.
You know what? And Sonia, if you don't mind, there was a question that came in from Leslie Lane. She asked, how do we dismantle police unions, or at best hire or replace some that need to go? And I'm guessing you mean, Leslie, the police union leadership.
No.
But either one, I guess, can answer that question.
Well, I mean, it's hard to dismantle a police union because of the fact that they are the collective bargaining unit for the police officers. But you don't have to pay dues to the police union, right? With the recent Supreme Court ruling, you don't have to pay dues to the police union, and you still get everything that you're entitled to. A lot of people don't know that, right? They don't know that you don't have to pay dues anymore to your police union, and you could still get all the rights and benefits that you have from the union. So the union doesn't want to tell you that because they bank on Negroes giving their dollars in dues money, and we don't get the same support. I've always been an advocate that Black officers need to get their own union. Stop giving the union money, and let's form some national Black law enforcement defense fund or something like that. Because the reality is, you're going to get the raise. Right, you're going to get your benefits. You might not be able to vote for who's president of the union, but so what? Because many Black officers are outnumbered anyway in their police department by the white officers, and the white officers block their vote, and then they'll put in whoever they want to put in, and then some Black officers don't even vote. Elias, brother Elias, just lost New York City. Corrections, one of the biggest correctional facility, historically had a Black president for the longest of time, right? You have 10,000 officers, right? Majority Black and brown, and only 3,800 officers voted, right? Wow. So that shows that we, just like the political process, Black people don't even take part of their union process, right? And even if you have a Black man that's a president of the union, he has to kowtow to the majority white membership. And it is what it is. And any black union president that's listening, I don't care because it's true, right? It's true. So what we have to do as law enforcement is we need to organize. You got the National Black Police Association, the elder Black Police Association in America, and black cops would rather join the FOP. They listen to their white counterpart, and they'll join the FOP that supports Trump, that supports getting rid of dissent decrees over police departments that abuse black people. And here you are, a black cop, and won't join the black organization. You're going to listen to your white counterpart and say they don't join that organization. They're racist. But then you join the FOP. That doesn't, we have to have a real, true, and we need a psychiatrist. This is mental health. Because this is about mental health, right? Black officers are mentally ill sometimes because they do something that's so against who they are, because we are such of a minority in law enforcement, and we just want to fit in this culture, which this culture only wants us, just to use us and then throw us away. So I think unions, we need a black law enforcement union. That's what we need, because these unions, the only thing these unions are good for is your benefits and getting a raise. But when you come under fire and you facing racism and discrimination, them unions ain't got no help for you, even if you got a black union president.
Wow. So
you
can
know
I
what?
come in real quick? You hit a note, Damon. You talked about the aspect of it. Okay. Because we are suffering from trauma. Mm-hmm. We've been suffering from trauma for 400 some years, right? So now we have additional microaggressions that we're dealing with on the inside of our police departments. And it's so deep that many of us are afraid to just say, like I said, what it is earlier, that it's racism. Because every time you say that, it's another cat of nine tails on your back. And you're getting shut down, ostracized. You can't promote. You can't get a specialized assignment. And, at some point in your black career as an officer, you're going to have to make a decision about what you're going to do. Are you going to stand on principles? Do you even understand the principles? And if you do that, understand what comes after that. And I like the idea of having a black union for many reasons that I'm not going to say on this call right now, only because there's going to be a follow-up conversation that we're going to have, and it's going to be fire. But with all of that being said, there is trauma. And we've got trauma that we're not even either recognizing, nor are we addressing. So we're injured on the inside, right? What are we going to do about that, right?
Right. Well, before we got live, I was talking to both of you about the experience that I had last week with our sister Carrie Horn in Buffalo, and one of the interviews that she did, I believe it was CBS. The reporter asked her how did this event impact her family, and she just broke down in tears. And it's those who don't know the story of Carrie Horn. She's was a police officer in Buffalo, Jesus Christ, Buffalo, New York, that was fired for stopping the choking of an African handcuffed man. Her story has got national attention recently because of the George Floyd, but this happened almost was 2008, so I can't do the math right now, but it was a while ago. And what you mentioned, Sonia, is so impactful because there was a point that I realized that she's been fighting this issue nearly as long as I've been alive. Because she's been a police officer back in the 80s, right? So she's been fighting that system nearly as long as I've been alive. And when the asked that question, it just all came crashing down. And you saw it in her face, you saw it in her eyes. And I remember the next day, and I'm not a crier. I am not a crier, FYI. I'm not saying I'm not being macho. I just don't cry often. But the next day, I broke down because I realized that she's been fighting this nearly my whole life. So I want to reflect on what you just said, Sonia, and maybe pick back on what you said. Talk about the trauma that is instilled with law enforcement who, like you and Damon, and I know, so wait for Heather to pop in, constantly speak out on injustice. So, Sonia, I'll let you start with that one.
Um, the depth of it is hard to explain. I still have not quite wrapped my head around it. But I am sure of the stressors that it created for me and how those manifested in my personal life and in my professional life. Because in my professional life, well, although I had great support in my personal life, there was hardly any in my professional life. And so I found myself attempting to navigate this stuff virtually by myself most of the time. I had a couple of people who could identify with what I was going through at work, and they were both Black women, and we would commiserate and talk, but I was the highest ranking one. So my trauma went a little bit deeper than even theirs. And so personally, hey, listen, I'm a proponent for everybody who's affected by this to get some counseling, because that was probably the best move that I made. I needed to talk to somebody who was outside of that particular system. And I chose to talk to another sister because I didn't get to have those conversations with professional sisters at my level at work. And somehow I identified with talking to another woman, and it worked wonderfully for me. But, you know, you for the rest of my life, there are things I will never forget. You just can't, you know, it don't just go away. And so when people say these Black officers are not speaking out, little do they know how many people really are out there doing the work, but they are really paying for it. And so it's helpful when your community also embraces you and say, hey, listen, I know you must be going through something. We don't like the policing system as it is, and we're going to help you fight to change it. And so that's what we need. We need community support besides that Black union that Damon talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah,
How about you, Damon?
Brother, let me tell you, man. I really think that people don't know the trauma that Black law enforcement faces on a daily basis, especially those who speak out. We also have to understand that we recognize, those are our conscience, that we are 4 degrees separation of the victims of police criminality. Either we know the victim, we know somebody that knows the victim. The victim is a family member. In a lot of cases, we are the victim. Black cops, plain clothes, or off duty, are shot by their white counterparts, shot at or killed by their white counterparts all over this country. And it's really, you never hear of a white uniform cop mistaking a Black uniform cop mistaking a white cop. You always hear of a white uniform cop mistaking of a Black cop being a perp, and then they shoot and kill him. And even when some Black cops come out to assist in plain clothes, they're shot. Right? We heard stories about that. So there's a trauma of being Black, you know, and dealing with a racist system, and there's trauma of doing a job that you want to do because you want to give service to your community, and then looked from your community as a traitor or Uncle Tom or Kizzy or whatever. So there's a battle that goes on in your psyche, and I really think people don't understand that. And I saw one. There's a documentary, and I'm going to say it out here. It's about the 12 NYPD officers that exposed the
crime and punishment,
the quota system. Crime and Punishment. That's the name of it. And I want everybody to watch it. And there's a part in there where they're sitting at a meeting, and the black officers, black and brown Hispanics, are reaching out to Tamika Mallory and all these local protest people. You know, now they done put their lives and their job on the line to expose the system. And in the process, they're looking to these protest people that out here protesting and standing and screaming and hollering all the time. They're looking for them to help. And one of them says, well, that doesn't fit our narrative, supporting cops. Are you kidding me? Are you really kidding me? See, this is what black cops go through. And even when they try to do good, a lot of these protest profiteers that's out here having marches and rallies don't even support when a cop tries to expose the system. So that adds on to the psyche. You know, I mean, look, I had my family attacked. I've been attacked. You know, they tried to get my job. The former district attorney, Janet DeFiore, tried to put me in jail. So I've been through a lot, you know, but I'm still standing. You know, I had the Democratic Party come after me because I was exposing them for not doing what they're supposed to do. Right? So, yeah. Public enemy number one, but it's okay. You know, it's okay. We got through it, and there was a lot of stressful times, but people don't know. People don't know what black law enforcement go through, especially those who stand up, and even the ones that don't stand up, because we have stories like Carrie O'Horn. Mm-hmm. So why would you stand up? Why would you stop another white cop from abusing a black officer, and then you lose your job because you're just doing what police officers are supposed to do, stop a crime? So I mean, we're caught in a rock and a hard place, you know. And I think instead of looking at us as traitors, I think the black community needs to change their glasses and look a little deeper about what we're doing and the obstacles that we are continuing to face in this racist system. You know, then you got some foolish ones that, why don't y'all quit? Well, we quit. You might as well just forget about it for you, brother, sister. And we quit. So, you know, I mean, we have to work together. I mean, we have to work together. And I mean, in some cases, you know, it works. The community gets it. But then other cases, you know, you have people that just don't like police. I get it. You know, but if the black community ain't ready to police themselves, so I don't even think how they gonna get rid of the police department, and we can't stop our brothers and sisters from shooting each other. We gotta think about that too.
Right, and there's so much impact. You know, I was at a protest yesterday, and I gave a sort of a speech about, I call it the notion of all lives matter, right? And as Damon, you know this, and Sonia, as part of this platform, police officers reached out to me across the country to say, here's my story. Carrie O'Horn was one of them. And matter of fact, when her story aired on CNN that same day, I had a brother from Florida reach out to me who said, I want to tell my story too. And one of the things that is always hard to communicate, at least as a civilian, is there's this trauma that exists absolutely in the community, right? The black community. But the black officer is also part of that community. And I know in your stance, there was the brother who was a whistleblower in New York County recently, who's getting a lot of backlash. And, you know, I see this happening all the time. So my question would be to both of you on this one is, what steps are crucial for law enforcement to respond to and begin to close this gap of inequality between the black community and law enforcement? Like, what steps are crucial? Sonia, I'm gonna let you. Let you go first.
Okay. You know, prior to I'm an optimist. For me, hope always springs eternal. There's only very few situations that I find to be just totally unacceptable. I can think of two right off the top of my head that I ain't gonna mention. One of them involves the president. Um, and it's not that I'm not optimistic or hopeful now. It's that we are in a really, really crucial time, and this is not a good time to play games or look at this as play, or we're gonna go back to the same old, same old. We cannot afford to be doing the moonwalk on this thing. And so the steps are really crucial. And the most important step to me is that there has to be commitment in the most important areas that we just talked about, legislation and law, with the people who are running our governments, both locally and federally, with our leadership within the police department, with Black officers. Look, ever since the murder of George Floyd, our national office phone and our email has been blowing up with Black officers who want to tell their story. You just said it. They want to tell their story. Hey, I've been going through this. Yeah. Hey, I hear somebody else has been going through this. I live in a county, Prince George's County, that is one of the most wealthy counties with a majority Black population in the country. Yet our police department has a federal lawsuit against it by 15 Black and brown and female officers for discrimination. That is a federal lawsuit that they have been allowed to move forward with. Why? We have a Black county executive. The chief was white. He just resigned. But I'm saying to you, where is the commitment? We know that's a rhetorical question because we know that there is none. Right. And so if we don't have commitment, and let's talk about it individually, we all need to step up our game on this. This is not time to be lax and say, oh, well, maybe no. We have to demand the people, the public, who we work for. Law enforcement works for you. You have to demand what it is that you want and be serious about it. Stop, and the Black on Black crime is an issue, but don't let them distract you with that, because there's always going to be a distraction. If it ain't Black on Black crime, it's something else. Oh, you got red hair ribbons in your hair. It's going to always be something. So commit. Everybody who's on this call, commit.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And I want to, Damon, I'm going to ask you to respond. I'm going to start putting on some of these questions that's pouring in on the comments. Okay. So,
okay. Well, I mean, you have to start with the head of the department. I mean, we can't settle for just a Black face in the place anymore, right? Because that doesn't work. We need consciousness. We need commissioners of consciousness, not just commissioners of color. Because if you have commissioners of consciousness, they're going to come in and hold accountable, right? They're going to hold you accountable to policies, procedures, and training. They're going to, and if the policies, procedures, and training are not up to snuff, they're going to change it, right? We shouldn't have to march, right, to have our policies and procedures and training and have accountability. I mean, a lot of the times in these police departments, the policies are there. They're just not holding the officers accountable to the policies and to the procedures or to the training. So we have to start with the commissioner, right? And if that commissioner is not doing their job, and usually they work for the county exec or they work for the mayor or the city manager or whatever, however your city is structured, right? And if that elected official don't want to change that commissioner, then you vote that elected official behind out. I mean, that's the process, right? So we have to, as Black people, we have to learn the process and how these systems work that oppress us, right? That oppress us all the time, and we have to take part of that. We shouldn't just vote on election day and then just go home. We have to attend city council meetings. We have to attend the different committee meetings, the public safety meeting, right? You have to attend these things. That's what part of the reason why people say, well, the white community gets treated than the black community. Why? Because if you go to the public safety hearing, it's packed with white folks that voted for those people that's in there. They take part of that. Negroes don't. See, we have to change our mindset. Part of the problem is us. It ain't the police, it's us. Because we don't do the correct things to change the systems. And then the people that we put in place to make the legislation and laws to change the systems, we don't stay on their behind to make sure that they do their job. So part of the problem is us. See, if we take care of that problem, then all the stuff will start working out. But we're not doing that. We want to show up to rallies, have 9,000 people out the rally, and only 300 vote on election day. You know, that's not working, y'all. That's not working. So we have to get that process going, and we have to get these right. We have to get right commissioners and leadership in these police departments that's going to address these issues and hold officers accountable down the line, right? The commissioners, the lieutenants, the chiefs, right? The captains, the sergeants, all the way down to the officer. See, because if the officer is doing messed up, that means the supervisor's not doing his job. And if that supervisor's not doing his job, the person over him is not doing their job. And then the chief ain't doing his job. Then ultimately the commissioner's out to lunch because he don't know what the hell going on in his police department. Right? So I mean, and we see it all the time. I've been in law enforcement for 30 years. I've seen the good commissioners and I've seen bad commissioners. And I see how the membership, how the rank and file reacts to the bad ones, and then how they get in line with the good ones. Right? And then we need some commissioners that's going to just start firing bad officers. Some people just shouldn't even be in the job. Right? We all work. Everybody work. Whatever job you in, there's somebody there that you sitting there and say, you know what, this guy shouldn't even be working in this department.
Well, can I take a minute here? I want to bring in my sister, Heather Taylor. Heather, how are you doing, sister?
Heather!
I didn't want to give up. I was like, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going until I get this. Literally, it'll be 50 minutes and the show is over.
To be fair, we're gonna probably do. I don't know what your time schedule is like, but we can do an after party if you want. I know I said it's 4 p.m., but you know what? I think we need to give Heather the chance to speak as well. Heather, first of all, welcome to the forum. I know technology can be always fun, and I actually wrote this one down specifically for Heather because you're dealing with some very interesting times right now in St. Louis. And I've been following ESOP and the work y'all been doing. And by the way, ESOP has a document that I was looking at about that you actually have on a website that I think should be shared, and I'm going to share it before the show is over. And it really does lay out some things that communities should be doing in regards to legislation, and I want to make sure that everyone knows what that document. And actually, I think all three of you got documents like that, so I'll put that together. Professor Heather, how are you doing, Heather?
I'm all right. I'm here. I'm here. That was rough. That was rough. Because I had every block up possible to not have Chrome. I had everything up possible to not have Chrome.
Well, we were just talking about what law enforcement, what is crucial for law enforcement to do to bridge the gap between the community and law enforcement. So let me get ahead and let you have the floor on that question. So Heather, what is the crucial pieces to that, to bridging that gap?
Damon and Sonia probably already spoke about this. I think a lot of times we just need to shut up and listen. We don't do a very good job of listening to our communities and identifying with them. A lot of things can happen with training. A lot of times we want to train. And training doesn't always work. It's about going out there, connecting with people and actually talking and listening to them and really, really listening. Because a lot of times we add to the problems that already exist in our communities. And we go in there with the mindset of being this enforcer, these punishers, and it just doesn't work. Those times are long past gone. And they didn't work with the 1994 Crime Bill Act. They didn't work with 3 strikes. It's not going to work now. And that's what we're seeing. And it's about connecting to communities, but you have to first listen to these communities.
That's absolutely wonderful point. If you guys mind, I'm going to dive into the questions. I know we're at 3:53, but there's a lot of questions here, and I don't think even my talking points didn't hit any of them. So I want to give due time. I want to bring up one in particular. Let's go with Peter Buck. Peter Buck is actually running for office. I spoke to Peter not so long ago. His question was, could Truth and Reconciliation Commissions be places / process where our citizens can't talk today, where our citizens and Black officers could heal and make progress? Have you seen them work in other parts of the country? And I'll let any one of you guys take that question.
Yes. My deputy commissioner, first deputy commissioner, Louis Molina, is a big fan of truth and reconciliation through policies and through working with the community. So yes, I mean that's part of the pie in changing the relationship. So yes, I do agree. That's something that can be added. That's something that can be used in working out that relationship with the community.
So I noticed he used Mr. Buck said Black officers, and I would like to ask him a question if he thinks that we're past the point where we can heal with white officers.
Ooh. Peter, if you can respond to that.
I didn't mean to throw nothing in.
No, this is great. That's a great question.
Because, look, okay.
Hey,
I talking to my friends, I find it interesting that many of them are just not interested in talking to white people. They're like, I'm not explaining anything. They can go read a book or watch a movie. I'm past that point. We've been telling you, and now we don't want to have this conversation, which is why I'm asking him that question.
Mm-hmm. Peter, I could, because I think Peter, RSVP, Peter, I could actually bring you in if you want to, just type in yes, and I'll actually bring you into our discussion. But I want to move on to another question. Or at least, I guess, this one is interesting because this one is coming from a personal experience, and it's from someone, S.J. Burns. When the Black cop left me and my husband with a white gun-pointing psycho cop in my home, his actions made a statement. Why did he leave me when I was begging him not to? During my research, I learned that he did not have to stay, but all those records mysteriously disappeared. Internal Affairs, so no records of officers ever being in my home. Wow. That is a wild moment. And so let me just again, I don't like to rephrase questions, but obviously this person was wanting to know, she's asking a Black officer who maybe she felt comfortable with, or I don't know, he or she felt comfortable with, but they still left. What are your thoughts on that?
I'll let y'all go first on that.
Oh, okay.
You want to hear from Heather?
Yeah, let Heather have some time. Heather.
Go ahead, Heather. Say something.
I recommend anybody that's had a negative encounter with a police officer, the first thing you should always do, if you're not arrested, hopefully you're not arrested, and let's pray that you leave out of it alive or unharmed. But my recommendation to you is to always document it. Send an email, send a text message to yourself, trusted family member, especially with negative experiences. Describe it as much as you can about the incident, how they look, tall, dark, light, whatever, the white, Black, whomever, badge numbers, anything you can remember, to immediately after that moment. I know it's difficult, but after that moment, it's important to do that. And so that you have your proof of it, that this happened as well. I can't justify some officer leaving you in the hands of a monster. That just basically tells you that that officer, no matter who they are, black, white, or whomever, that there are monsters. And a lot of times people are they have this false sense of security with all black officers, when there are some black officers I wouldn't turn my back on. And it's important to recognize that that's a reality as well. And it seems like this person was that for you, S.J. Burns, and that's unfortunate. Why did he do it? A coward. That's my first reaction, is that he's a coward. He did, and that you find a good attorney, or you said that you did document it. Oh, okay, well, good. But there's a record of it. If there was a call for service, there is a record of it. You got to find an attorney to get that, or your local police, your civilian review board. If you have that, bring it to their attention. If not, go to the media. You just don't give it up because somebody pointing a gun at you like that. You have to have just cause for doing something that drastic.
All right. Peter, as FYI, I sent you an invite. So once you come in, I'll be able to see you, and I'll bring you in to address Sonia's question. But there are plenty of questions here, and I'm looking at the time. It's already 4 o'clock. Do you guys got about 10, 15 minutes? So you're rushing?
Yeah, man. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
I'm always conscious of time. So I'm going to sort of scroll through here and try to look at there's a lot of comments, and I know you all can see the comments as they're coming in. There was a question here. Let's see here. This one comes from Leslie Lang. How best can we lend our support when it would appear we are on opposite sides of the argument? Also a very interesting question. And this question came after, it looks like after Damon was talking about expressing the trauma being amplified in policing when you're speaking out. So I'm guessing this is a how can the community lend a support question.
Well, I guess communicate with black officers, especially those that speak out. I mean, it has to be communication. I mean, our organization, we're always in the streets, and we're always talking, and we're always trying to communicate. And and I know I see the work Heather's doing, and I know Sonia's doing her thing, but we need to continue that dialogue, because there's always people on both sides that try to get between, the dialogue. But we have to be able to, have open door policies and continue to reach out, and hopefully in your community or in your state, there's a black law enforcement organization that you could reach out to. They do a lot of work in the community, and just be part of that. We did for a while. We used to do once a year. We used to do a barbecue for families that lost their children to gun violence. And we would bring all the mothers and fathers and kids and have a great day, with black law enforcement and families that lost their kids to gun violence. There's different things you could participate that law enforcement organization, black law enforcement organizations do. And we do it on our own time. Like, it's not a policing program. It's not coffee with a cop or anything like that. We do this for our own time, for our own people. So I think just try to participate, find out, where it's at, and participate. And also go to your city council meetings and show support for black officers. And show support for black officers. I think, they will appreciate it. Those that are out there trying to, help the community and being genuine about it.
Oh, Eddie, how about the rest of you? How could the community lend support?
I think a lot of times what we find is that a lot of our support comes from our activists, and that would probably shock a lot of people. but the people that we're engaged with most are activists. They are out there protesting right now, or at our mayor's house, and rightfully so. It's important. How you lend support is sometimes just showing up at events. We do community forums, and we give open and honest dialogue. We can always end it to agree to disagree. But just understanding that you have to keep that line of communication open, because there's going to be a time where you're going to agree on something, and you're going to have to come together with your community, and you're going to have to come together with your members and your officers that are of like mind to fight fights that are important. Right now our mayor doxed a lot of our activists and put their names and their addresses out there.
That was crazy, by the way.
That was crazy.
I watched that.
That was unbelievable, really. I was like, really? Doing it?
Yeah. So we have to support that, because you're talking about activists that face retaliation from police officers. It happens, just like officers that stand up face retaliation internally. So we got to support our activists as well. And we know that our mayor should resign. We listed the steps for how to get her removed. Our community needs to know those things, and it's important to keep that communication going and stand up for each other when we're right.
Right. Well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, yeah. Peter Buck just joined us. I want to let you respond first.
Okay. On both sides, this is gonna make this short. On both sides, there just needs to be some courageousness, because if you notice, when you finally reach the point where you've had enough, and then you make yourself known, like I've had enough, and you find out other people have had enough either, the more people you find out have had enough, the easier it is. And so it's going to be a step. If you're a spiritual, you need to look to your faith and know that you are going to be okay, but that this is really important, and that people have died for this for hundreds and hundreds of years, and people are still dying for the same thing. And so when do we say stop?
That's a really good point. Peter, welcome to the forum. How are you today, sir?
Oh, I'm very well. This is not something I anticipated at all. So I guess I'll say thank you, and I'm a little bit nervous, and maybe even a little bit humbled. The three people who you've brought here, Terry, are telling really moving stories, and I think also providing some really great things for people like me who are running for office or who have served in local and municipal government to really take to heart. And I want to give a shout out to Leslie, who's one of our local organizers as well, who's been asking questions. Right.
Leslie asks a lot of questions. Yes, she does.
Yeah, she's good. I had asked a question about the Truth and Reconciliation Commissions because their work in South Africa, of course, and then my very good friend of mine in high school, her father was killed, murdered by the Ku Klux Klan in Greensboro, North Carolina in 1979. He was there to support the protesters who were working in the textile industry, and I know that in some ways that it's worked well there. And the reason I brought up in part Black officers is because of the what you all are talking about, being Black law enforcement. And so, it seems that there are multiple additional burdens for Black officers. It doesn't seem like it. It's very obvious that there are multiple additional burdens in this kind of trauma that gets accumulated on top of one person or a smaller population, and the way that can get crushed down. And so I'm just imagining both I don't mean to be artsy or something, but the kind of both catharsis of sharing with community to say, look, I am burdened. Like, I'm imagining myself being in that position and trying to release some of that burden and wanting that person to be healed and receive empathy, but then also have avenues for progress so that a community can do that together. And that's why I asked the question where I parenthetically said Black officers, it's because of the way that you all were talking. I don't want to say too much more, Sonia, but I hear what you're saying about how some Black folks, including my interns, are like, you know what, I'm sick and tired of explaining stuff to white people. Mm-hmm. My Reverend Carol Sissel telling me when I called her a couple weeks ago, I said, how are you feeling? She's like, Peter, I'm exhausted. I'm tired of feeling disposable. She's a Black woman, right? So, you know, I don't mean to place an additional burden, but also know that for some folks to be responsive and responsible, you know, we need a story. So that's why I asked the question the way I did. And thank you so much for asking me on, Terry.
No problem.
That's a great point about to be responsive, you need a story. That's really interesting, because the opposite opinion, which I'm playing devil's advocate right now because I understand what you're saying, is that, well, we've been giving you these stories. What have you been doing with the information? Just something to think about.
Yeah, nothing.
Right. And I want to, like what Sonia's saying, I started in law enforcement in 1990, 30 years on the job. And I joined the National Black Police Association in 1992. And when I got there in 1992, you had brothers like Ron Hampton, you had brothers that had been on the job since 1970. And I'm saying the same thing that they were saying. And from 1970 to 1990, nobody believed what Black cops were saying until something that was created called a cell phone. And people started recording all these incidents, what Black cops were saying that was happening. I don't think personally we need to convince white people about anything, right? I think we need to convince Black people to come together, because it doesn't make sense how you have Black communities all across America that have all Black city council, that have a Black mayor, all Black school board, right? But a majority white police department and police brutality, and nobody's doing anything. I think, and they have a Black commissioner. So, I mean, and this is in a lot of cities. This is not, you know, just one city. This is a lot of cities. So I think we have to start convincing Black people that we could change the institution where we have power at. And we're still not, we still haven't come to that capacity, because people will say, well, how do you have police brutality when you have a Black mayor and a Black police commissioner? Right? So these are the things we don't have to convince white people. I think we have to convince Black people that they need to take charge in their community like every other ethnic group does. I think that's the biggest problem of the struggle.
Heather, I'll give you any words on that as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of times that things are absolutely black and white. And some of the questions I wanted to S.J. Burns, I can connect with you offline as well. You're more than welcome to inbox me anytime. Some of the things that we have in police culture is it's more than black and white. And we have to be honest with that, because there is a culture in law enforcement of being quiet. Now, these officers that get away with murder, sometimes there are Black officers that are there. I will never be under the impression or ever leave anyone with the impression that I believe that Black officers are the examples of what's right and what is wrong, what is always right. No, because like I said, some of us are monsters as well, because we've seen some of our coworkers murder people. We've seen our coworkers do some of the most unbelievable things. And some of us are too afraid to stand up because we're like, hey, I got to keep this paycheck. I got to keep this roof over my head to pay for my bills. And it's about, what did you take this oath for? You took this oath to protect and serve people. And we lose focus with that. I believe the culture in law enforcement is the main problem. The culture, there are pockets, absolutely. There is racism, there is white supremacy in police departments. There's a culture of officers who actually believe that you can victimize other officers through sexual assault, through physical assault, you name it. We have that as well. The culture in law enforcement is the biggest problem with having, because we have the policies and procedures there. We have the policies and procedures to remove you for whatever reason as an officer. But the problem is the culture gets involved, and that culture eats policies and procedures. It eats it morning, noon, night. It eats it. And you have officers of all races that believe that it's okay to be a monster. Oh, that's my friend. I eat dinner with his family sometimes. Who cares? He committed a crime. You got to separate. We have to learn to separate ourselves from those moments. Hey, I have to write a document right now that's going to blast our chief. He's my friend. I'm friends with the personnel director. That's my friend. But guess what? He's got to get it. He has to get it. The chief has to get it. The mayor has to get it. The director of public safety has to get it. And guess what? I am under the belief that, hey, if I'm right, I'm right. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I'm still going to respect you. I'm still going to accept your phone calls. And I'm expecting you to do the same. But what I want is for you to change it. So I think the culture in law enforcement is the biggest problem. However, there are those subcultures like racist officers, homophobic officers, people that just hate people for whatever reason there is. And those officers of all races and genders, women don't get a pass as well.
You know what, Peter, I will also say, I say this all the time, the biggest trick in white supremacy is to convince that the consciousness is solely due to the hue and the color of your skin. And I just did a presentation not so long ago when I said the worst thing a police department could do is hire someone based on the color of their skin, and they might have the consciousness and the awareness of the generational trauma that exists in the community, because they could do more damage. One, because the police department think I did something great, right? I hire someone of color, I'm diversifying my force. But then that person that doesn't have that consciousness, doesn't have that that ability to understand the generational trauma, can now make more damage in that community. So, and that's going along with what Heather was just saying too. Peter, I'm going to let you go.
Hold on, Peter. I want to offer you one more thing if I can. And like Heather said, you can reach out to us after the call. But in America, it's not just the police that have this systemic issue of race. If you think about it, that's how America was created and sustained, on systems that depended on the oppression of a whole group of people. Okay, I see law enforcement as the enforcement arm of those systems. And it works very well because of the inequity in power dynamics. The police can go out there and they can do whatever they want. They can even make up stuff, and people can be like, oh my God, is that you can do that? They don't ask permission, or we don't ask permission. I'm almost tired now, but we don't ask permission. We're just like, this is what we want you to do, and you better do it. We're very badge heavy. We've forgotten, we don't have any sense of humanity. And I would contend that the officers that we have been hiring, for the most part, not everyone, but a generalization, is that those are the officers that will sustain all of those systems. They believe in the inequities of education and the financial system and housing. And it may not even be something that they're aware of. I mean, people like to say implicit bias. I happen to think that people know exactly how they feel, but that's just me. But okay, so that's what we're dealing with. It's not just the police. It's all of the other systems surrounding policing that we're having to deal with, and which are part of this conversation that we're having in the movement in the country today.
Well, thank you, Terry, for inviting me into the room, and thank you, Damon and Heather and Sonia, for sharing that with me. And Sonia, just two really quick points. Terry, you said something that reminded me of probably my favorite quotation from Stephen Biko, which is, the most potent weapon in the hand of the oppressor is the mind of the oppressed. And so we become instruments of something more powerful than ourselves, which, to Sonia's point, is that the multiple systems before us have been constructed on Black lives and Black deaths. I'm rereading the book The Color of Law right now, which is about land use regulation and the controlling of where Black folks are allowed to live and be invested in. So, there's a lot of work to be done, but I appreciate it, and I'll follow up with each of you. Thank you, Terry, for just yeah.
Thank you for
this is great.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, so I want to be mindful of time, and I want to give each one of you guys a last word. And I know we still have 31 people logged in, so they're still tuning in, and I do apologize, but I am mindful of time. But my last words, my last question of the day is: what message do you have for America? And let's start with. I'm not going to give the order. I guess whoever want to go first and go last, go with it. But what message do you have for America during this time?
Whoever want to go first, ladies.
David, look like you want to say something first.
Huh?
You look like you want to say something first.
Damon, you got something to say, don't you, Damon?
No, I always have something to say. It ain't never. It ain't never. Listen, the message I want to give America is that this ain't nothing new. This ain't what we're seeing here is nothing new. What's new is that when George Floyd died, it was a perfect storm, meaning that COVID-19 had everybody in their house. It wasn't no distractions, wasn't sports, it wasn't nothing, no concerts. You couldn't be distracted. And the entire world watched for 8 minutes and 45 seconds. A man died at the hand of police. That black men has been dying at the hand of police officers, and it's so American. It's more American than apple pie. Right. So what the world saw is what we already knew. The thing is that was the response of people of all colors and the outrage of people of all colors. My message to America: don't stop. Continue. Let's not accept crumbs from the political table in some weak legislation that was made 7 to 8 years ago. Let's make actions of police officers that violate policies, procedures, and training a crime. We have to do it. We have to address police criminality. Let's stop calling it police brutality. Let's start calling it police criminality, which my mentor, Roger Abel, said. Stop calling it police brutality. What these officers do to black people and even poor white people are crimes. And we need to start calling it for what it is. So my message to America is: don't stop. Don't stop protesting. Don't stop agitating. And don't stop demanding from your elected officials proper laws, from local, state, and federal laws to hold police accountable for violations of policies, procedures, and training. That's all I got to say.
Thank you, Brother Damon. How about Sonia? How about you? Go next.
Damon's always a hard act to follow. The brother been blowing fire since I've known him. But I want to agree with Damon totally that. So we're in this time now, and it was so perfect how it all happened. First it was COVID, and then now we have this, right? And I would urge and really appeal to people not to let the moment pass, not to let it pass collectively. I read somewhere if you are a Christian or a believer of the Bible, of Jesus Christ and God, I read somewhere a couple of days ago where we like to individualize passages in the Bible, but the Bible really speaks to us as people, as being in relationship with one another. So what I would appeal to people in this moment, in this really, really difficult time that we're having, where we're not sure about trusting the police, including those of us who are on call. Okay, we got to tell our children something to keep them safe, having to talk. And we might have lost our job due to COVID. We might get sick with COVID. I would appeal to people to embrace the transition, because there has got to be something wondrous on the other side. And if that's that we can look forward to, then perhaps we will stay engaged and we will continue to move towards the goal. So that's what I'm going to end with.
Mm. Well, thank you so much, Sonia. And then last but not least, Heather.
So I guess what I would like to end with is to tell everyone to keep fighting. Don't give up. Coming from a family member, having an aunt who was murdered by a deputy marshal, who only got 3 years for murdering her. The pain is real. It doesn't lessen any day. And because of things like that, you can't give up. To give up means that we're going to continue to die brutally like we have. I think it's important for us to continue to fight with qualified immunity. Just have an officer who's now under investigation and should be fired, hopefully. But you're talking about 2012, trying to have this guy removed who I think killed someone under qualified immunity, and he should have been booked and charged, but he wasn't. So it's important for us to address qualified immunity, and that has to go on a state level. If Colorado can end qualified immunity, every state in the land should end qualified immunity, because it's a way for officers to hide behind, or law enforcement to hide behind an action that's murder for any civilian walking the street. And qualified immunity is one hell of a thing, and it's allowed them to, a lot of these people that are killing Black and brown communities and our Native American communities as well, and mentally ill as well. We shouldn't have people who encounter law enforcement when they're in need of help end up murdered. Mm-hmm. And qualified immunity shouldn't allow us to hide behind those actions that would be murder for anyone else. So that's my word for today. Just be safe and take care of each other.
Wow. Well, you know what? I am in debt to all three of you. I think that it's one thing to have a conversation about policing and trauma and the Black community, but it's one thing to be part of the Black community and policing. And I'd like to thank all three of you for standing in between the gap between both the community and law enforcement. And I know that it's difficult, and I know it's tiring, but I think we all are in this country in great debt to folks like yourselves. With that said, I want to remind folks that the next forum is scheduled for July. It's going to include, actually, Damon, I think you might know them, maybe all of you might know these brothers, Jonathan Newton and Kenneth. Yes, they're going to be talking about the laws, legalities, and times of injustice. And I am currently set to be the facilitator, but I think I might get kicked out, which would be great, because I don't mind talking, but I think people get tired of seeing me. So I like to be behind the camera. People don't like to be behind the camera. But I want to thank you three. I know we still have a large group still tuning in. And I'm going to make connections. I think Heather, someone asked to connect with you. Peter has asked to connect with all three of you. I think he's trying to do something similar. And people are asking for a part 2. So, folks, let me explain how this works. There's not a part 2. But I think if we get us three together again, I know that that would probably be appreciated. Maybe we can talk about a different topic or something else. But I'm going to, this will be live for about a week. I'm going to transcribe it, make a document about the takeaways from today's conversation. Again, I'm going to share each one of your organization websites and also some of the documents that come from those organizations as well. So with that said, I want to wish everyone a great afternoon, and thank you all for tuning in. Everyone,
thank you.
Hey, all right, y'all. Nice meeting you.
Same here. Take care.